Welcome to the Vol Bros. My name is Evan, and this is my brother Rustin. We are two Vol Bros who are actually bros in real life. Hope everybody has having a great Palm Sunday. It has been an extremely busy few days in Knoxville, and in Baton Rouge, and in College Station, Texas. So we got quite a bit to talk about tonight. Oh my goodness, we have so many things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about baseball, softball, first scrimmage for football, offensive line, defensive line previews. I mean, tons of stuff. Jake Merklinger and Garrett Young. We'll talk about who they are too, if you don't already know. So let's start off with the LSU series recap. What were your immediate thoughts about that one, Rustin?
Well, I think we almost predicted the whole thing.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I thought about that too.
It comes down to exactly what we said. The first two games were going to be decided by one or two runs. Tennessee was right there in both of them and just had a bounce here, a bounce there, go against them, and it cost both games. And then Saturday game 3, we said LSU's biggest weakness is that third starter. That proved to be extremely true. By the second inning, Tennessee already had on the board and never looked back, hit the ball well all day, even when LSU put together a few hits, started to make a little bit of a comeback. Tennessee immediately responded, kept hitting the ball, and walked away with a 14-6 win that was never really in doubt. And, honestly exposed to everybody else what we were saying, that the third starter at LSU is definitely very unsettled. The first two are amazing, but number 3 is a big question mark.
Well, so here's my thoughts about that. The whole series was way closer than the scores would show. I mean, my goodness, the first game. Listen, there were times when it got down to 10-4 or 10-6 on Saturday. I was nervous. I mean, they had bases loaded with Tommy Tanks up to hit and only down by 4, and I mean that could have been a much different game. Kudos to Camden Sewell for getting out of a couple of jams there. But when you think about the game Friday, so we give them a run as we let the ball hit the ground in the middle of the infield. We just gift them a run. We take a run away from ourselves by getting picked off at first base. Like the very next pitcher. Exactly. The very next pitch would have been a 2-run home run. So that game, that's a 2-run game. Well, going into the bottom of the ninth, that should not have been 6-4. Should have been 5-5. We should have been tied going into the bottom of the ninth in that game. We defeated ourselves in that one. The same exact thing happened Thursday night. The bottom of the 8th inning, we gave them 3 runs, essentially. We gave them extra outs. You can't give the number 1 team in the country extra outs. You can't do it. We were out of the inning, and Hare continued the inning, and they ended up scoring 3 runs in that inning. That was the difference in the game. So the whole weekend long, that was a much closer series than the scoreboard would say. So I think there's obviously some encouragement there. It's the number 1 team in the country. We beat ourselves, and they can walk away from Baton Rouge knowing they didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. That's how that series went down. Go ahead.
I said if they get 1 win, honestly, I think that's a good weekend. If they win the series, we're national championship contenders, and
they should have won the series.
we very well should have won the series. We were right there with them. I think bare minimum, the coaching staff has to walk away from that going, okay, we've got a shot. Like we're coming together offensively. Guys are starting to figure it out. The bullpen. Chase Dolander for once was really good to start a game. That was good to see. Mm-hmm. Chase Burns struggles with command at times, and it's getting a little questionable. Drew Beam has continued to throw well, but my goodness, the bullpen has just been amazing. And honestly, for Tennessee fans who are going, well, what's going to happen when these 3 starters go away? This bullpen's going to move into starting roles, and they are legit. There's some big time arms in that bullpen. So everybody should be really, really excited about the future because there's not going to be any drop off. And
And
the other thing I
Ben
was going to,
McDonald even alluded to that on the broadcast on Saturday. He was like, "There's not much drop off here in the bullpen." I mean, he talked about how complete of a staff it was.
and speaking of bullpens, let's talk for a second about Chase Shores, the kid that threw 2 innings on Friday in middle relief. True freshman, 6'8", comes in and every single fastball was between 99 and 101. Like, where do you find freshmen who are 6'8" throwing 100 miles per hour and convince them to avoid the draft?
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
real.
how in the world did that kid end up at LSU? How big was at LSU?
LSU,
How big was that bag? Because I'm
yeah,
sure his signing bonus had to be in the hundreds of thousands.
yeah.
That's just mind blowing. I legitimately watched that kid throw, going, how on earth do you get this kid on a college campus? I mean, that
Yeah.
every major league scout had to be just chomping at the bit to get a hold of that kid. Because for those of you who don't know, when you're 6'3", 6'4", and you like a Zach or a Ben Joyce, and you throw 100 plus, it's really, really hard to pick up. But when you're 6'8", throwing 100 miles per hour, by the time you let go of the ball, you're halfway to home plate. So the hitters, I mean, if they even have a moment, a millisecond of losing the ball, it's gone. They never see it again. So I
Yeah, I
don't know how
mean,
you get that kid.
he starts 60 feet 6 inches away from home plate. By the time he throws it, he's probably about 51, 52 feet away from home plate at the minimum. So, I mean, that's a much different ball game when that ball's coming at you 100 miles an hour and you have one sixth of the time less to watch it come at you.
100 miles per hour from a guy that's 6'8" to a hitter appears more like 105 to 108. I mean, that ball's getting there in a hurry.
So LSU series easily could have come away with at least 2, if not 3 games. Essentially gave 2 games away with defensive mistakes. That's unfortunate, but great to see him bounce back on that Saturday game, normal Sunday game. Lady Vols, they took a series out of Texas A&M, so that's a top 25 matchup at Texas A&M. They win the first game in extra innings. Second game, barely got beat, and then the third game, they dominated today. They really did dominate. My camera has frozen again on me, so I'm going to put you on solo while I change my camera, and then I'll come back on the screen.
Well, I think the biggest takeaways are, first of all, the Lady Vols are 30-3, and that's just a remarkable that they're at that point. But I think the second takeaway is this: the Lady Vols today go out there looking to win the series. Gottschall gets the start. Peyton Gottschall gets the start. She gets 1 out in the first inning and gives up two runs on 3 hits, and just doesn't look like she's feeling it. The Lady Vols immediately go. Again, this is the first inning, 1 out in the first inning. They go to Carlin Pickens, and over the next 6 2/3 innings, she does not allow a hit and strikes
it was
out
over
10.
at that point.
I mean, literally 6 2/3 innings does not allow, coming off the bench ice cold, because nobody's warming up one out into the first inning
to a top 25 team in the country.
Right. So she comes in, strikes out 10, doesn't allow a hit over the next 6 2/3 innings, and the Lady Vols coast to a win. And when you've got that kind of pitching depth where you can, as a coach, watch a girl go out there and in the first 4 or 5 hitters go, nope, she doesn't have it today. Hey, get the other one going. Let's go. And the other one comes in and just completely eliminates the other team. And not just, I mean, we're not talking about, no offense, but we're not talking about some mid-major. We're talking about Texas A&M in College Station. And she just walked out there and obliterated them.
That is a nice luxury to have.
It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And she also, she kind of redeemed a couple of other outings she's had, because recently Carlin hasn't been what she was earlier in the season, which is expected. She's a true freshman. She actually took the loss in game 2. So that was another thing that was really cool to see, was after she took the loss in game 2, for her to come back out there in game 3 with essentially no warm up and just completely shut them down says a lot about Carlin Pickens and how she's made up mentally.
She already has one perfect game on the season, and then today, for all practical purposes, she had a complete game no-hitter except for one out that she didn't get. But I mean, like, that's incredible as a freshman in the SEC.
Yep. Well, and like I said, the confidence the coaches have, because Ashley Rogers threw on Friday and got the win, and Carlin threw on Saturday and lost. So for them, knowing Ashley is one day more fresh, to say, no, we're going back with Carlin, she's going to go out there and she's going to shut this thing down, is pretty incredible.
So Lady Vols continue to just dominate their competition. Let's move on to the first football scrimmage that was this Saturday. Some of the minor little clips that we get to see. All right, so I guess I'm just going to go to my other camera because it keeps freezing up on me there again. Some of the little minor clips that we get to see, clearly don't do it justice. But from what we could see, Joe and Nico both looked really impressive. We'll get to see that more in a couple of weeks at the Orange and White game. But I wanted to read you all a text that I got from a friend of mine. He's a Georgia fan, just so you know. He's a Georgia fan, but he was at the scrimmage Saturday because he's a coach, and he was at the coach's clinic. And so they got to watch the scrimmage, and he texted me as soon as it was over. And I'm just going to read you his text here. He said, the kid from Carnes is going to be the starter. And he said he was really good. He said he's really shifty. He's really fast. I said, you talking about Deshaun Bishop? And he said, I think so. Well, it was Deshaun Bishop. And so what's interesting is, he texted me that. This is a local high school, middle and high school coach here in Chattanooga. And he texted me that immediately following the game. And then in the post-scrimmage press conference, Josh Heupel mentions Deshaun Bishop by name. So, when we were talking about running backs in here, we were talking about the main three that we've assumed would be the ones on the field all the time. And I think they probably still will be. And that's, Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and Dylan Sampson. Well, apparently there is not a drop-off hardly at all when Deshaun Bishop gets on the – and my friend did say, he was running against the twos, so it wasn't the number one defense. But he said, man, he was just dominant. It was noticeably better than everybody else on the field, at that time. So that's really, really exciting if you're a Vols fan, to know that, if by some chance, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if by some chance one of the top three get injured, Deshaun Bishop can step right in. So let's just hope he can learn to pick up, blitzes, pick up pass protection stuff early so that he can be such a great contributor to the offense.
If you go back and watch that running backs video, we made a comment about Deshaun, and I made the comment, anybody who lives in Knoxville who saw Carnes play at any point said, how is every school in America not after this kid? Because he played, and they always got kind of criticized because of the schedule they played, but anybody with eyes could walk out there and watch that kid and go, that's different. He was so incredibly explosive with the ball. Combine that with just game-changing speed. And I can't remember if it was I believe it was his sophomore year. Oak Ridge was really, really good. Carnes was just Carnes. It's just who they're the typical, 500 type team in Knoxville. And everybody said, if Deshaun Bishop is really that guy, he's got to do it against Oak Ridge. And he went out there and ran for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Carnes upset Oak Ridge. And anybody who was there would tell you Carnes didn't upset Oak Ridge. Deshaun Bishop upset Oak Ridge. He was everywhere. And that was kind of that was the game in Knoxville that really kind of put him on the map and made people go, okay, this dude's for real. I would say of all the guys in the running backs room, and you got to remember, Dylan Sampson can fly. I would love to see a foot race between Dylan Sampson and Deshaun Bishop, because Deshaun Bishop might be faster. So I would not be shocked at all. We've said it before. Heupel loves to play 4 running backs. We assume the 4th guy would be Khalifa Keith, but it wouldn't.
And they still got Cam Seldon over there too.
Right. But it would not surprise me at all if the number 4 guy is Deshaun Bishop.
And the reason that I put some weight on what my friend told me, my friend who's a high school coach, a middle and high school coach here in Chattanooga, who was watching the game, the reason I put weight on that is he's not even a Tennessee fan. He doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? Like he has no dog, no pun intended, because he's a Georgia fan. He has no dog in the fight. He was just there, just telling me what he saw. And I didn't even ask him, that was unprompted. And he texted me and said, he's going to be the starter. He's really good. Like that's a big deal.
And, that's typical coach speak. I mean, coaches who've done it for a long time can walk on a field, look around for about 5 minutes and go, okay, we got to watch out for that guy, and that guy. You can see it. There's people just stand out almost immediately, whether they're fast twitch or whether they're, just imposing physically. You can just tell immediately who are the guys you've really got to watch for. And Deshaun Bishop, because of his burst, is one of those guys. He just stands out in a crowd. And, to stand out in the crowd he's in, that's a pretty stinking impressive crowd.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, that's a great point. And so that'll be exciting to see him at the orange and white game as well. Or go ahead.
At running back, Heupel mentioned he and Dylan Sampson, which I thought was interesting that he didn't mention Jabari and Jalen. I also thought it was interesting which wide receivers he mentioned.
Yep, I noticed that too.
He made a point to talk about Squirrel. He made a point to talk about Chaz Nimrod. He talked about Caleb Webb. And then he said Nathan Laycock did some things well at the end. Now, for those of you who can't interpret coach speak, what he essentially just said was Squirrel looked really good. Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb surprised us and did some things we were excited to see them do. And Nathan Laycock's not quite ready yet, but somewhere down the road he will be.
Yeah.
That's really what he's saying.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. You could almost hear the kind of like kind of disappointment a little bit when he was mentioning Nathan Laycock, but I thought it was very interesting that he specifically mentioned Chaz and Caleb Webb. That's telling. It shows that he knows that they're going to need them. I thought I figured out why my camera was freezing, but apparently I didn't. So I'm going to go back to the other. Yeah, I'm giving up the ghost on that one. So another important thing that happened for the football team this past week, and you could kind of see it in the writing on the wall when you saw the tweet come out from Jake Merklinger with him and his dad and Josh Heupel at the baseball game, just hanging out with the fans. They're just sitting in the regular seats, man, general admission seats. They're not even up in like a box or something. They're just sitting, chilling with everybody, man of the people. But Jake Merklinger is the committed quarterback for the next recruiting class, 2024 class. Rustin, tell us a little bit about Jake, what we can expect from this guy.
Kid's really good. He's the real deal. And, that's not my opinion. That's quarterback experts who watch these guys all the time. They talk about the fact that he's a true dual threat. He is an explosive runner, which a lot of people probably would be surprised by when you look at him. He doesn't look like the kind of kid that would be an overly explosive runner, but he's actually really fast. Fantastic arm. Eric Ainge was talking about him earlier this week, and he said, and Eric doesn't watch a lot of recruiting stuff. He doesn't pay a whole lot of attention. But once somebody commits, he goes and watches their film, and he was gushing over Jake Merklinger's film and talking about how he can already make all the throws. He was impressed with his read progression. He was impressed with his ability to feel the pocket and take off. And he was also impressed with what he could do once he took off, because he is a true dual threat. I know the coaching staff is ecstatic about him. He was their number one target. He chose, this is another big deal, he chose Tennessee over Georgia. We've talked about the loss.
Absolutely.
We've talked about the loss of Todd Monken and what is that going to mean to Georgia. Jake Merklinger is a Georgia kid who chose Tennessee over Georgia, and
could be the first potential post Monken domino fall that we see.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell y'all, I've been around Mike Bobo. He's a nice guy, but he's no Todd Monken. And when people get in a room with him, they're not overly impressed with his X's and O's. One of the things I thought was interesting that Jake Merklinger talked about when he committed was how much he enjoyed getting on a board with Coach Heupel, which means he's a really strong X's and O's kid, and that's important in this system.
And he enjoys it, which is very important too.
Right. That's a big deal. So I think they got a steal. Eric Ainge was going so far as to say that he thinks this kid can compete with Nico and maybe push him next year. But I think the ideal situation, and we've said this before, and I probably say it ad nauseum, the ideal situation is to stockpile quarterbacks, redshirt the freshmen to get 2 years between each one, and go out in the portal and find backups who are willing to come be a backup just in case. But if you can get back to where you're stockpiling quarterbacks and you've got them redshirted 2 years spacing in between, it's the ideal situation.
Speaking of that, I could be totally wrong. I could end up being wrong, but I think back to Heupel's days at Missouri. He had Drew Lock as his quarterback. Really incredible, gifted thrower. Drew wasn't so much with his legs. It makes me wonder what if this is a similar situation, except you add in the legs with Jake Merklinger. If it's going to be similar to Drew Lock, and my goodness, if so, then awesome. I think we're getting this. I think we're getting exact. That is a really good analogy for Nico, except probably better than Drew Lock.
Yeah.
When you look at what they were setting records at Missouri on offense under Josh Heupel. They were setting SEC records at Missouri on offense, and so when you think about what he can do in with these guys, man, that's exciting. Now there is another guy that Merklinger might end up throwing the ball to a little bit if he gets to the field, which it kind of sounds like he might.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee picked up a preferred walk-on from Garrett Young. Now you might say, well, why in the world are you talking about Garrett? Must be a slow news week. Well, it's not. It was a busy day. Okay. But why are you talking about this guy, Garrett Young? Well, if you go look him up, and I invite you to do so, he has 0 stars because he wasn't rated at all coming out of high school. And you might say, well, why is that? That's not a good sign. Well, apparently he got injured the spring of his junior year of high school. So that summer between his junior and senior year of high school, he was unable to go to these camps and stuff where all the rivals and 247 and On3 scouts where they are. He wasn't at any of those camps. So instead, nobody came and saw him. But you say, well, how do we know he's any good? Well, he went to Alpharetta High School, and that name sounds familiar. It's because that's where Robert Joshua Dobbs graduated high school. So he was there at Alpharetta, which is just outside of Atlanta. And I think we could all agree the football talent level in Atlanta is pretty daggum good. And so I just want to read you one stat about this kid. And I think it's all you need to know. Being at a Atlanta school. When he graduated from Alpharetta, he finished his career as the all-time leader in both yards and receptions at Alpharetta High School. That's all I need to know. I mean, like that's it. He actually was originally going to Air Force after when on signing day, and then just after signing day, he got an offer from Tennessee, and he was able to get out of his signing with Air Force, and now he's coming to Tennessee as a preferred walk-on.
And he had offers from Army, Maryland, and Louisville. So, this is not a kid that, was just kind of floating around and, might be a nice one to add on at the end. This is a kid that can play. And to what Evan was just saying, so I lived in Atlanta for the last 5 years, and I used to sit and just watch high school football games and just honestly sometimes in disbelief. Now, high school football in Tennessee has gotten better. There are pockets of schools where the talent level is really good, especially in the Nashville area. But I'll just be the first one to say it. And I was a high school football coach in Tennessee. The talent level in Atlanta will just blow your mind. You feel like you're watching small college games all the time because the speed and the size of the players just sometimes doesn't even make sense. Like you're watching kids going, how is this kid still in high school?
Yeah. When you think about Buford, you think about Milton, you think about all these schools, yeah.
Even the private schools, Wesleyan, Blessed Trinity, Marist,
Atlanta Christian. We've had a few from Atlanta Christian.
Nichols, yeah. All of those schools. There's just so much talent. And I mean, I'll tell you, in the school that I used to run, our best players, who were all really good players, would fly under the radar, but the mid majors would show up and recruit them because they knew the Power Fives didn't know they existed. So really, really good players who fly under the radar in Atlanta still sign with the Division I schools. They just don't go to the Power Fives. I remember one year in our region, I want to say it was either 32 or 33 players that signed Division I scholarships just in our region, our 8-team region.
That's not including other classifications and that kind of stuff.
That was just our one single A region of 8 schools. It was either 32 or 33 guys signed Division I. We had 4 of them. It was.
So, I mean, the kid goes to Atlanta high school in Atlanta, and he graduates as the all-time leading receiver, essentially in yards and receptions at Alpharetta High School. That's saying a lot. And it also says a lot about the rating system of, all the high school rating services. It shows that there's a hole in the rating systems, because just because the kid was injured and couldn't go to these camps, he didn't get seen by all these people and get ranked by them. When he's got multiple Division I offers, and now he's committed to be a preferred walk-on at Tennessee.
I'll take it a step further. If being at Alpharetta, he plays Milton every single year. For those who don't know, Milton's entire defensive backfield every year, all 4 of them signed Division I.
We've had a few recent ones at Tennessee from Milton. And this kid, leading receiver against that type of secondary. So that's an exciting addition. I mean, that is a seriously good addition. And I hope the best for the kid. I hope he's able to see the field. But my goodness, he's walking into a talented receiver room. And, I kind of like the kid for that, because he knows he's walking into a talented receiver room. He's like, yeah, I'll be a walk-on. I don't care. I'm going to go play.
He's got good size. One recruiting service still hasn't updated his height and weight, but the other one has. He's now 6'3", 185. One of them still has him at 6'2", 180, but he's grown some. 6'3", 185, that plays. He can do some things with that.
Yep. So excited to have Garrett joining the Big Orange. Last 2 things of the day are offensive line and defensive line previews. So we're going to start with the offensive line, the 2023 offensive line for University of Tennessee Volunteers. We have two anchors that I think are vitally important, and we were very fortunate in that they avoided serious injury last year, and we need to really hope that they avoid it again this year, big time. Even more importantly, this year, in my opinion, and that is Cade Mays and Javonte Spraggins. They are the anchors, the rocks of this offensive line. And one interesting thing, it's interesting when you think about how the transfer portal has impacted Tennessee. You could very easily make a case that second only to quarterback, because we've seen what happened with quarterback the last 2 years. It's two transfers who have been, playing, and now this year it's going to be it's a transfer, Joe Milton. So obviously, the transfer portal has helped Tennessee in the quarterback room. It'll be you can make the case that offensive line is the second most benefited position from the transfer portal on Tennessee's roster. Last year, they had Jeremiah Crawford and Gerald Mincy transfer in. Both immediately started at left tackle. When one of them wasn't in, the other one was in at left tackle. Jeremiah Crawford was the guy who had the famous puking scene against Alabama and then looked up at him and nodded at him like, yeah, I just did that. And then he went up and blocked the guy, that he's that guy that did that. This year, we had a couple of very important departures from the offensive line, Jerome Carvin and Darnell Wright. Well, this year we have two more transfers coming in, Andre Carrick from Texas and John Campbell Jr. from Miami. Hopefully they can step right in and fill and plug two holes. That'd be ideal. But it does make you wonder if one of the two, either Mincy or Crawford, will end up on the right tackle spot, or if Carrick is going to come in and be that spot. I don't know. Well, time will tell. We'll see here over the next 2 weeks, really, where they're thinking about putting people. But there is one guy on campus, and then I'll let Rustin tell me his thoughts. There's one guy on campus that was extremely highly rated coming out of high school. He's a true freshman, so he's an early enrollee. His name is Sham Umarov, and he was a very highly rated offensive lineman coming out of high school. We'll see what he can do because you got Addison Nichols right there as you got Ollie Lane right there. It'll be interesting to see the five that take the field against Virginia in the first game.
So I think we're going to see Gerald Mincy at left tackle. I think we're going to see Jeremiah Crawford move over to right tackle. I think Cooper Mays obviously is locked in at center. Javonte Spraggins is locked in at guard. And I think that other guard job is going to be fought out between John Campbell and Andre Carrick. The nice thing about Carrick, he is long, so he can actually learn all of the offensive line positions other than center. So if they get in a bind, he can probably play multiple spots. And I think that's one of the things they like about him. John Campbell's a little more limited. He's probably just a guard. His feet and his length aren't quite what Andre Carrick's are. So I think he's probably just a guard. I say just a guard. Guard's important in this offense. But he is huge. And I think the thing that stands out to me, and I was really excited to get to the trenches and talk offensive and defensive line, because when you look at our offensive line depth, we have the five guys we just mentioned, or the six guys really we just mentioned.
And I forgot to mention Dane Davis too.
Yeah. You've got Jackson Lampley, Parker Ball, Dane Davis, and Ollie Lane, who all got significant playing time this past year. So right there, you've got a 10 deep. Okay. What I think what was really interesting, though, was coming out of the scrimmage today, Josh Heupel made a point to mention Addison Nichols and Vyzen Lang. Vyzen Lang is the true freshman, huge kid. And what was even more amazing to me was he said they were fighting for the backup center spot. Vyzen Lang is 6'4", 340.
I was about to say, isn't that kid, he's 340 pounds? Yep, that's him.
Okay.
That's a big dude.
That's a huge center. Let me put that in perspective for you. Cooper Mays is 6'3", 305. Bison Lang is 35 pounds heavier. Okay. To play center in this offense, you've got to have excellent feet. You got to be able to move. So for that dude to be 340 and they're thinking he's a center, his feet have to just be incredible. But when you look at the depth chart, and you mentioned Sham Umarov, so I was fortunate. I got to see Sham play quite a bit in high school, and we hosted several showcase clinics for Under Armour and Nike and different groups like that on our campus, and Sham used to come work out for those. So Sham is similar to Deshaun Bishop in that when you show up and if Sham Umarov is in attendance, when you show up, everybody immediately goes, "Who's that guy?" Because he is a house. I mean, he is just a monster of a man. So he graduated high school.
He also played with Garrett Young at Alpharetta High School
For a little bit. Yeah, he finished his career at Denmark, but he started at Alpharetta and then transferred. So he is 6. So this, well, who knows what he is now? Coming out of high school, he was 6'7", 325. Okay, that's before he ever stepped foot in Tennessee's strength program, and he's been in that for a while now. So he might be closer to 335, 340. But that Joker's 6'7", and it is all in the shoulders. I mean, he is just a house of a man. So I would not be surprised at all if we saw him early in some capacity. But the honestly, the luxury they have, they've got 10 guys that they are confident in and they can rely on, and they can actually redshirt Sham if they want to. Similar to what they did with Mo Clipper this past year. Mo Clipper was a highly rated offensive lineman coming out of high school, and they just didn't really need him this year. So they redshirted him. You know, that guy's 6'5", 305, and they think he's probably one of those backup tackles of the future. So
that's a good thing because offensive line is a developmental position.
Yeah.
Like you want guys who are 3rd, 4th, 5th year guys on the offensive line. You don't want people walking in as true freshmen be like, all right, well, you got to be in there because, you know, they're going to go up against the guys like, you know, Georgia's defensive line and that kind of stuff. And I can't remember how big that dude was for them, 6'7" and 380 or something like that. I mean, that dude was crazy huge.
So I think Glenn Ellerby's got to be excited. I think for the first time in maybe 8-10 years, Tennessee actually has depth at offensive line. I think he would feel very comfortable playing 12, maybe even 13 of them. He's got dudes, and they're huge. When you look at the roster, I mean, Cooper Mays and Parker Ball are the two smallest guys. Parker Ball is 6'4", 290, and Cooper Mays is 6'3", 305. Everybody else is significantly bigger than them. So I think this is probably one of those comments Heupel was referring to the other day when he said, well, you were out there, you saw it. We're a lot bigger.
Yeah. And Austin Ireland just commented, Austin, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. He said, and this is actually what I was thinking when you were talking about the fact that he's 340 pounds, because I was thinking about how Cooper, he has to be the guy that leads the offense to the ball every single play. Like he's got to be there first. And so that's immediately what I thought of too. And Austin thought the same thing. He said, seeing a 340-pound center be able to have the conditioning to get on the ball after every play as quick as we need him to would be impressive and a sight to see.
Yeah.
I totally agree. That's exactly what I was thinking of as well.
But keep in mind, these guys don't waste time. So, you know, they wouldn't have Vice and Lang. I mean, he made the comment. I'll read you the exact quote. Addison Nichols and Vice and Lang, those guys get to continue to grow and step up. There have been really positive things from them in the first 7 days. Excited to go back and watch the tape. We're going to need those two guys to really grow on the back half of spring ball. He flat said they're competing for the backup center job behind Cooper Mays. So, you know, again, these guys don't waste time. They're not into projects. You know, they're like, this is where you're going to be. So let's get it going. And so for Vice and Lang to already be getting comments at 6'4", 340, snapping the ball, unreal.
Well, and to Austin's point there, he's exactly right. I mean, center is a vitally important position in this offense because everything starts there.
Yeah.
Even like pace of play. You know, we talk about how fast Tennessee is and getting on the ball. That's because of Cooper Mays. It's
Yeah.
because he's the first guy on the ball every single play. And you will see him busting his tail down the field to get to the ball to make sure that they are ready to snap it in 8 seconds or less. So, and the all the rest of the offensive line follow his lead, and so it's a vitally important position in this offense, particularly for pace of play, which we know is important in this offensive scheme. So that's a really good point. Any other
This
thoughts
may
about the
be
offensive lineman?
this may be the first time since the Butch Jones era that we have enough offensive linemen that if somebody goes down, we're not going to flinch. Like, and we don't have to all of a sudden wholesale sub everybody and move everybody around to try to fit somebody in there and hide a weakness.
Right.
They have dudes, and they have a lot of them, and they are huge. And they're excited about them. They think they can all play. Like I said, I think if Glenn Ellerby was on here right now, he would say we're very confident in at least 12 of these guys, maybe 13. And it's been a long time since we've been able to say that on Rocky Top.
Yeah, and even Dane Davis. I mean, you know, we have him talking about him being providing depth and stuff. Dane got significant minutes last year at right tackle.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like that's somebody you can put in there and trust, you know. So very exciting for the offensive line room. The whole offensive side. We've now finished the offensive side of the ball, and it's kind of hard to say anything negative about any of the spots. Like, I mean, it's especially if the two transfers this year, John Campbell Jr. and
Andre Carrick.
So I did the pronunciation guide on Tennessee's website, and it said Andre Carrick. So I'm going with it. I had to do my research there on his name. With Andre and John Campbell, if they can come in and solidify one of those two, spots as well, they're set up for success. But notice, once again, they're not relying on younger guys to fill those spots. They know it's a developmental position. So they went out and got two older guys who've been there, done that in Division I college football, Power 5 college football, to come in and fill those spots. So defensive line, our first defensive position group. And I'm going to say this right out the bat. The MVP and most important person in that defensive line position room, Rodney Garner Jr. That is the number one most important person in that room, because he can coach some dudes, and the dudes know it, and the dudes want to come play for him, as evidenced by a couple of people they were able to pull in this recruiting class, as well as the fact that they had a 5-star defensive lineman on campus this weekend. So yesterday, as a matter of fact. So Rodney is the reason why people can be excited about the future of the defensive line position. Here's my quick breakdown of them. I think we have three groups of guys. There's three. There's one group that are people that have a lot of experience and we know we can rely on. There's another group of two guys who I can't wait to see what they do this year, because they're young and they're really good. And then there's two freshmen that are going to be very interesting to see what they do. But here's who I got in these groups. The first group, I got 6 guys. 6 guys in this group. And these are people who have a lot of experience on playing in Power 5 college football. They are reliable for Tennessee at this spot. That's Amari Thomas. He's got to be the lead dog. He has to be the dude on the defensive line this year, especially being an interior lineman. We need him to be every bit as good as he was last year, if not better. Tyler Barron, there's another guy we know we can rely on. Bryson Eason. Karat Garland. He's got to have a big year too. Roman Harrison. He's technically listed as a defensive lineman. He's kind of more of like a hybrid outside linebacker, but Roman Harrison, he finished with an extremely strong finish to the year last year. Let's hope he continues that this year. And one guy that I included in this category that you could make a case doesn't belong there is Elijah Simmons. It's time. We have seen him. Everybody brags on how he sings. Even in the Vol Club Confidential interview with somebody, I can't remember which guy it was, a new guy. He said, Austin Price asked him, "What's one thing that surprised you so far?" And he goes, "Elijah can really sing." Well, we need him to be the huge dude that he is in the middle of the defensive line. That's what we need him to be. And it's time. I mean, like it's time. He's had 3 years to develop. This is his year. It's time. So that's my first group, the group that has experience, that's reliable. Here's my next two dudes. And these are the dudes I'm really excited about because I want to see what they can do. Joshua Josephs and James Pierce Jr. No relation. He can be an honorary bro though. He's got the right last name. We just spell it differently. Those two guys, you talk about flashes of brilliance last year and just flashes of extreme talent. They had it, buddy. And so I'm really excited to see what they do this year. Especially Joshua Josephs as a speed rusher. My goodness, he was incredible to watch last year. So much fun. And then my last group is two guys as well. And it's two highly touted freshmen coming in. David Hobbs, first of all. And then he's already on campus. Both these guys are already on campus, early enrollees. And then Elijah Herring's brother, Caleb Herring, who is technically listed as a defensive lineman, but essentially it's like Roman Harrison 2.0. He's a hybrid outside linebacker, basically, is what he is. And so those two guys, I'm really excited to see what they bring to the table because they are highly touted. What do you think?
So Rodney Garner's best teams at Auburn, he rotated 12 defensive linemen. He loves having packages. He loves being able to throw different looks in different situations. And he has always hung his hat on playing a lot of guys. This may sound crazy, but I legitimately think he could play up to 15 people this year. And I think 9 of them will end up in the NFL at some point. I think this is hands down the deepest and most talented position on our entire roster, offense or defense. I think they've done an amazing job.
That's a bold statement.
I'm just going to call it now. I think they've done a fantastic job recruiting talent, developing talent, and keeping talent. Because look at
Rodney
what we're
Garner.
talking about. Yeah, it's 100% Rodney Garner. Austin just mentioned Tyree West there in the comments.
For those who might be listening to the audio podcast, Austin said, "I feel like Tyree West is forgotten. Dude is a stud and was a bigger recruit than people remember." It's a great point. Absolutely. Great point.
And he got a shout out after the scrimmage. It was interesting who they mentioned from the scrimmage. They mentioned Tyree West. They mentioned Elijah Simmons. They mentioned all the Leos, Caleb Herring, Roman Harrison, James Pierce. They love those guys. They mentioned Tyler Barron. I think the 4 starters are going to be Tyler Barron, Amari Thomas, Elijah Simmons, and Roman Harrison. But literally, there are so many different looks that Rodney Garner can throw out there. I mean, think about this. Interior defensive linemen, listen to this list. This is not including the 2 starters, Amari Thomas and Elijah Simmons. You've got Tyree West. You've got Bryson Eason, Amari McNeil, Dominic Bailey, David Hobbs, the 5-star, Dejon Terry, who has played major minutes and done extremely well, Omar Norman Lott, who is our primary target in the transfer portal, and Karat Garland. So right there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 defensive tackles that they are going to feel very comfortable putting on the field. Then you go to defensive end, and you've got Tyler Barron, you've got Roman Harrison, you got James Pierce, you got Caleb Herring, you got Joshua Josephs. I mean, they got some dudes. And these are guys, I'm not exaggerating when I think I would be willing to bet that of these 15 names we just said, 9 of them will end up in the NFL at some point. I mean, there's some legit talent here, and they fit the mold. And everybody in the NFL loves Charlie Garner defensive linemen. I mean, they know they've been trained well. They know they've been prepared for the next level. And championships are won on the defensive line. Georgia's proven that. Alabama's proven that.
Clemson
Defensive
proved that.
line is where you win championships, and we have a championship defensive line this year.
I'm glad you mentioned Omar Norman. I totally forgot. He would be in my first group. I had 6 dudes. He would be in that group. Transfer from Arizona State. It was a big deal getting him out of the transfer portal.
Everybody wanted him.
So I mean that's a huge addition. I mean, you're right. They can run out there. I mean, think about this. Even last year, they didn't have that many different guys. But think about how many different looks they would throw at offenses last year. You know, Tyler Barron lined up. Maybe if you go back and watch the whole season, Tyler Barron may have lined up at every single defensive line position at some point during the season. You know, even Cole Kubelik, when he was, I can't remember which game it was he had at Tennessee, but he was standing in the back of the end zone talking about specifically Byron Young and Tyler Barron. I just totally blanked those names. And he's talking about the 2 of them, and he's like, it's really interesting to see how they're using them on the defensive line right now. Because, you know, Cole's sitting there looking at that from an offensive line perspective, and he's sitting there thinking, man, that'd be kind of tough matching up with those dudes on the interior and then on the outside of the line and stuff. So he was impressed by how they were using different looks to confuse offenses, different looks to create mismatches against the offensive line. And I'll tell you who really benefited a lot from how they would stunt and everything like that was Joshua Josephs. Yeah. When he would come in the game, they would run that, you know, that stunt, and he would come free. It seemed like once a game, every time they put him in, he would come on the inside, you know, right inside that left tackle, and golly bum, he just blew up the quarterback sometimes. So, I mean, he's so fast. That's the thing. That's why I'm so excited about watching him play again this year. Because, I mean, you know, after being in a college football strength and conditioning program for over a year now, you know, he's just going to get better. And that's what's so exciting about him, because you could see flashes of just pure athleticism last year when he was playing that people couldn't catch up to him. And that made me think about Aaron Beasley, which, I mean, that we'll talk about him next time in the linebackers. But I mean, talk about somebody who started at point A last year and ended at way up here at point B. I mean, he was dominating that Clemson game. He was the best defender on the field for both teams. I mean, it was incredible.
So I know we're talking defensive line, but I love what they're saying about Aaron Beasley in spring practice, coming out of winter workouts, going into spring practice. He is absolutely leading.
Yes.
And that's a big deal, because he deferred to Jeremy Banks in the past, and he really needed to be the lead guy.
And it's a good thing that he is, because he's going to be the leader on the field. That's for sure. He's going to be running that defense. But yeah, defensive line. I mean, I think it's the first time, like you said, it's the first time in a long time that we can look at the defensive line and be like, man, we're going to be all right there. Because we had zero depth for a long time.
Yeah, I love when Rodney Garner goes with his cheetah package on 3rd and long. And with this group, that'll probably look like he'll probably move Tyler Barron and Roman Harrison inside and bring in Josephs and James Pierce on the edge and just say, go get him.
Yeah.
And those 4 guys at full speed coming off the ball is a really tough assignment for a defensive line or offensive line.
Yep, especially when they're stunting and crossing each other and stuff like that. That's not fun. And imagine being, you know, here's where that really comes into play. If you line up as 3rd and long and you see these guys come in and you're the running back and you're sitting there thinking, all right, I know in situations like this in the past, those 2 guys have stunted, but then I got that Beasley guy back there. He might be coming at me too. Who am I going to pick up? You know, which, I mean, that presents so many problems for an offense, and that's a great problem to have for us. You know what I'm saying?
Think about this. I was just looking at this depth chart. Think about this. David Hobbs is possibly the highest rated recruit that Rodney Garner's had. No, he probably is the highest rated recruit Rodney Garner's had at Tennessee. Right now, he's probably 13th in the rotation. There are legitimately 12 guys ahead of him right now.
Which is a great thing for the University of Tennessee.
Oh, it's
That is
amazing.
a great thing. That allows him time to develop. You can still play him in 4 games this year and still redshirt him. So, I mean, we'll see him on the field at some point, hopefully not in the first or second quarter of any game because he's, we have so many guys who are better in that position at this time, and he's just going to have time to get better and better and better. And then next year and the year after, he can dominate, in years past, if we had a 5-star recruit come in, it'd be like, all right, dude, you got to be ready because we need you like right now. And hopefully that's not the case in this situation.
But what a luxury it would be if he is that good off the bat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they don't get to redshirt him because he can't be kept off the field, and that allows them to redshirt or COVID year or whatever you want to call it, 2 or 3 other guys, and all of a sudden we're stockpiling depth for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for that too. That'd be cool with me. I mean, just once again, when we talked about the wide receiver room, we talked about a embarrassment of riches, how many weapons and talent is in that room. Well, like I said, for the first time in a long, long time, there's actually a lot of depth in the defensive line room. And that is just like Rustin said, that is an incredibly important thing, especially in the SEC. Because think about this. How many years have we as Tennessee fans sat there and thought, my goodness, their quarterback has all day to throw the ball, all day. And if we weren't bringing linebackers, there was no way we were getting any pressure on the quarterback. For years, we sat through that. Last year, we saw a glimmer of hope. We were getting to the quarterback rushing 4. And this year, we're going to have a luxury of being able to rush the quarterback with only 4 guys. And that's going to no longer I hope no longer will it be like 3rd and 18 and we're all just sitting there going, well, they're going to get it. I know they will, because we all had battered Vols syndrome, that kind of thing. And now we're going to be like, man, we got the ball back. We're going to go score again. That's what we're going to be saying. And you can get your battered Vols survivor syndrome shirt from our website.
I think the most interesting comment of the entire last week in practice interviews and press conferences and all that stuff, Keenan Peely, the linebacker transfer from BYU, who has over 100 tackles in college, and
that dude, really, he's gonna make an appearance in the linebacker preview.
Yeah, big time player, definite NFL prospect. He made the comment earlier this week that he's really enjoying this defense because it's a lot more aggressive than what he's used to. Okay, so those of us who have watched this defense for the last 2 years, we're going, wait, what? Maybe, just maybe, Tim Banks is finally comfortable enough with the guys on the field that he has fully opened up the playbook, and we're actually going to see the Michigan stunt packages, and we're going to see Aaron Beasley and Keenan Peely flying in the backfield a lot more than we have in the past. Because that was a weird statement for him to say this was more aggressive than what he's used to. BYU is a pretty stunting physical defense. And so for him to say this was more aggressive definitely got my attention.
Well, it's a fun time to be a Vols fan, that's for sure. And we so appreciate Ginger of Marvelous Mouse Travels for being the sponsor of our position preview series. You can find her at youtube.com/gingermmt or at gingermmt.com. Her travel planning services are completely free to you when you book through her, and that's for real. Like, it doesn't cost you literally anything to use her services. So we appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Austin, we appreciate you chiming in the chat, buddy. That's awesome. That's our favorite part, when people chime in with us and talk to us. I'm going to try to figure out why my camera keeps freezing up, and maybe next time that won't happen. That'll be a great thing. But we'll be going live probably midweek this week. And and then we'll be off for a few days for Easter, but we'll have some stockpiled videos coming out. So we hope everybody has a wonderful week. We look forward to seeing everybody probably, I don't know, you free Wednesday night?
Sure, let's do it.
Wednesday night. We'll do Wednesday night. That sounds good. We'll go live Wednesday night. But we hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful evening. I hope everybody enjoys the national championship game tomorrow. Speaking of that, this is one thing I almost forgot. So our bracketology group that we had going, essentially it's over because nobody in the group had the final four correct. And so no matter what happens tomorrow, it won't change the results. I was in last place after the first the round of 64 and the round of 32. But then I doubled everybody else's score in the round of 16 in the Sweet 16, and I jumped all the way back up to second. And so I had 160 points coming out of the Sweet 16. The next closest person had 80. But if you are I don't know who this is, but if you submitted a bracket and the name of your bracket is that big orange bracket, you're probably about to win our bracket, just so you know, because nobody has a chance of gaining more points in the championship matchup because nobody has those teams in the championship. So whoever that is, it's ESPN fan 18876565578. So whoever you are, you're going to get a shirt from us, Battery Vol Syndrome Survivor shirt. So
but you got to identify yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like, we don't know who you are or who to send it to. So if you can contact us at thevolbros@gmail.com and let us know who you are and how we can send you a shirt, or like what address you'd like us to send it to, we'll be happy to send you your shirt because you beat me by 10 points in the bracket. Rustin was third with
no one had Connecticut and San Diego State in the national championship.
Actually, they didn't. Nobody had any of the Final Four participants in there. So shocker, right? You know. So Austin, we appreciate that, man. He said, "Thanks, guys. Good show." Hey, we appreciate it so much, buddy. Look forward to having you back with us soon. But anyway, so we appreciate that. If you are that big orange bracket, please email us at thevolbros@gmail.com so we can make sure we get you your shirt. And we hope everybody has a great evening. We will look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday.